Live.
And good evening, YouTube. This is Michael. Tim is not with me right now, but I have James kind of subbing in, playing substitute teacher. However, Tim is currently on an airplane heading to Utah for Comic-Con, and I believe, James, we have a live feed of Tim on his flight. Is that correct?
We do. Yeah, we definitely do. I have it pulled up right here. Give me a second.
Sure.
And,
so, Tim, can you hear us, Tim? You there?
All right, here we go. Hold on.
Trying to get that connection going.
Yeah, it may take it a second.
Tim, okay, Tim won't be joining us today.
Yeah, it cut off right there for some reason.
Yeah, sorry about that. Tim's having some technical difficulties somewhere en route to Utah. So, yeah, there's that. We actually, after unfortunately losing our co-host for the show, I also wanted to say we are in a state of mourning right now. All those in my generation, especially, are deeply saddened by the passing of Gene Wilder. Gene was truly one of the greats, particularly in the 1970s and early 80s. James, you said before the show you don't really know anything about him. Is that true?
I only know him from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I didn't know anything else beyond that. I think that he was irreplaceable in that role, though. I think he did it absolutely wonderfully.
But the thing, he was also, he was really, there were two children's films that he was very well known for, and one was, of course, Willy Wonka in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The other was as the fox in The Little Prince. But besides that, he made a few movies with some very strong social commentary, particularly when he paired up with Mel Brooks a little bit. And, for example, Blazing Saddles, he teamed up with Richard Pryor, I believe, 3 or 4 times, mostly doing some kind of commentary about racism and stuff. And Blazing Saddles, if you haven't seen it, I know I've said it's not my favorite movie in the world, but the social commentary of that film is really dead on. And I would really, really recommend it, if nothing else for that, and to consider that film came out in the 1970s. I know everybody's sad about the passing of Gene, and we are no exceptions to that. I did like what Jim Carrey said, even though I'm not a huge fan of Jim Carrey. He said shortly after it was announced that Gene had passed that if there is a heaven, Gene Wilder has a golden ticket. And may he rest in peace from all of us here at the Untitled show.
Well, an interesting thing before we get started on the other stuff, I had heard, I don't know how true this is, but I had heard that at first he had the cane and he pretended to actually need the cane up until the scene when he didn't use it anymore. When he kept walking or whatever to get a actual true reaction from the rest of the cast. I don't know how true that is, but I think that'd be awesome.
I had not heard that, but I'll bet you that Tim, unfortunately, who is now somewhere in the wreckage of that airplane, Tim would probably be able to tell you because he's into that kind of trivia stuff about behind-the-scenes stuff. So hopefully, if he survived that horrific crash, he will be able to tell us something about that.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool if he did. I mean, I don't know how I'd feel as a co-star of his if he tricked me like that, but I think that would be...
I know cool. That, for example, when they filmed the original Alien, Ridley Scott did not tell the cast about the chest-bursting alien until they actually filmed that sequence. So when you see a couple of the people in the cast completely freaking out about it, that was not acting. They didn't know what was about to happen.
They had the actual technology to hide it without them knowing that would pop out of it.
There was no such thing as digital effects back then. They had to hide it.
I mean, I get that, but I assume that it would have been like a dummy or something where they'd have to... the way they'd set it up, I thought that they'd have to know, because it'd have to be set up in a special way. But no, that's cool.
Yeah, they did catch them off guard. And if you look at that reaction scene, go back and watch Alien sometime, and particularly the scene when the alien first bursts out of Kane's chest, and look at the reaction on a couple of the actors, including Sigourney Weaver, and you can see that they were genuinely freaked out over what was going on in front of them.
Yeah, I'll have to go relook at that now. That sounds.
It's actually worth looking at just for that reaction shot, because you can tell that they were not ready for that.
That's cool.
So, Gene, you will be missed. I actually watched a couple of Gene Wilder movies today. I watched Blazing Saddles, which is a genuinely some genuinely biting social commentary. I also watched Stir Crazy, which was a film with him and Richard Pryor, which is a fun film about a mix-up where he and Richard Pryor end up in prison and then try to break out. And if you like Gene Wilder and you like Richard Pryor, it's definitely worth watching. Anyway, let's talk about some other news that's not quite so depressing as the passing of a Titan. Mark Hamill, you dug up some information. Apparently, he may have inadvertently leaked a little bit of information about his role in Star Wars. What was that all about?
Yeah, I don't know if it was inadvertent or not. I'll try to get it on here. It might be a political stunt, or not political. Wow, it might be a stunt or whatnot. But apparently, he was shaving his beard. And while shaving his beard in the Twitter, he shared it on a video on Twitter. And during that, he said he was getting rid of his beard, but it'll be back in episode 9. Which the interesting thing about that is a lot of people think that he's going to die in episode 8. There's a lot of discussion around that. That doesn't mean he's not going to die. He could come back as a Force ghost or anything like that. But
I was going to say, if he parallels Obi-Wan, he could easily still have a major part in future films.
Right. I mean, it doesn't necessarily get rid of him in any way. Right. But, yeah, it was interesting. He did that. I believe it was today that he put it on there. So,
well, and for me, I'll tell you, I don't foresee him dying. I was never really expecting him to die in episode 8. I think that, especially after they killed Han in episode 7. Whoa, what was that?
Something I forgot to get rid of. It was a sound. I'm getting a screen capture, and it does that.
Oh, okay. Anyway, they, in episode 7, when they killed Han Solo, if they then kill off another major player from the original cast in episode 8, that's going to get a little cheesy, because it's going to end up, okay, who are they going to kill next time? When are they going to bring Lando Calrissian in so they can kill him? I don't think that they're going to do that, because that would become too cheesy at that point.
I don't know. You don't think they'd kill him just so to make sure that Rey was extra special?
Don't get me started on Rey being extra special.
I'm just saying it would be a lot better if all men were dead. # all men die.
Thanks. In other news, I know that they are currently digging through the wreckage that was Tim's flight to Utah, and Tim, wherever you are, we miss you very much. But if Tim did in fact manage to survive, then next week, because some of you may have asked me, what did you think of that Don't Breathe movie? And Tim and I both saw it this last weekend. And we're going to talk about it next week, actually. We'll do a full-blown review of it on next week's show, because I think it's a movie worth a serious discussion about. And so there is that. If Tim survived, like I said, we're all pulling for you, buddy, but we're not holding our breath.
You're probably in hell right now.
Yeah. We'll miss him. Sort of. Next thing I want to talk about is, in some way specifically, because Tim's not here, and that is The Tick. Yes, the big bad bug in blue is back on Amazon Prime. Now, as of right now, they have only released a pilot episode of The Tick, and I personally really like the pilot episode. I know Tim hated it, which is why I want to talk about it now, because Tim's not here. And so I can say the official position of the Untitled show about nerdy stuff is that it is awesome. Now, I think the reason Tim hated it, and I do respect Tim's opinions most of the time, even when he's wrong, but is that it's not as silly as prior incarnations of the Tick. The world that the Tick is in feels very much like the real world, where in the prior incarnations of the Tick, there are these parody superheroes everywhere, just being absolutely incredibly silly all the time. Everything about the city is a parody of what you see in comic books. This one feels like it's trying to parody the modern cinematic superhero presence, and so they created a real world environment and then threw the Tick into the middle of it. And I think the important thing about it is that the Tick's character and Arthur's character really work. Now Arthur in this one, because is actually kind of considered to be completely crazy, mainly because he believes there's a supervillain out there that's controlling everything behind the scenes. And he's, people are saying, oh, you taking your meds because you're seeing things, you're hearing things, and all that kind of thing. And then Arthur stumbles across a supervillain hangout and is about to try and get some evidence when he bumps into the great man in blue. And one interesting thing, and I don't know, have you seen any of their previous incarnations of the Tick, James?
I watched the cartoon. I mean, I wasn't like, if it was on, I'd watch it, but I didn't go out of my way. So I've seen multiple episodes of the cartoon.
One thing that I think is interesting is that this is something that has been in the original comic book, the first issue of the original comic book, the first episode of the animated series, the first episode of the live action series, and now the first episode, or at least the pilot episode of the Amazon series, all of which show the Tick first going through Arthur's apartment and trying to figure out where the hidden switch is to convert it into his superhero lair. That scene is in every incarnation of the Tick, including this one, which I love the fact that they just, for some reason, are constantly redo that one beat. And in fact, there's one part, because I had just watched the first episode of the animated series right before I watched the pilot on Amazon, and the Tick actually goes to the exact same spot in Arthur's apartment and tries to pull down a coat hook to activate the secret room and breaks it off, he does that in both of them. So I thought that was interesting. Now, the Tick himself is every bit as silly, optimistic. His speeches are incredibly, bad in a hilarious way, just like you would want from the Tick. The biggest difference between this live action version of the Tick and the previous incarnations is that the world he's in is very serious, and I get that that's one of the things Tim hated about the show. But I'm hoping that if Amazon does pick this up, that we're going to see lots of parodies that will make fun of both Marvel and DC. Like, I would love, they kind of introduced their Superman parody in the pilot episode, and I would love to see that he is like this emo moping dude, like what people complain about Superman from Man of Steel and stuff. I would like to see their version of Der Fledermaus talk in such a grovelly voice that you can't understand a thing he says. I think that they could do a lot of stuff like that and make the show hilarious over time. But it is only a pilot episode after all, and so they basically just had to kind of set up the world.
Well, that still sounds. I mean, that sounds funny. I like it when they do that. Like, if he's the only one that isn't taking it seriously, or is the joke the man?
Yeah,
I think that would be awesome.
Tick and Arthur are the only silly characters in it.
See, I think just based on what you told me, that sounds funny to me. I like things like that, especially if the villains, if they throw a couple of villains that were serious in there, and yet they're the ones that aren't, and they defeat them. I think that would be hilarious.
Well, what's interesting is the primary antagonist, he was only in a couple of scenes, but the behind-the-scenes supervillain that Arthur is trying to track down is actually from the animated series as well. He's called the Terror. And in the animated series, the Terror was a supervillain a very long time ago, and that everybody thought was dead, but he was actually still alive. And when he finally reveals himself, he's this like 90-year-old frail man because, well, he's 90 years old. Right. And this Terror is that Terror. He is a very, very old man, but we haven't seen him in action yet, really, in the modern day. So, unfortunately, there's still some stuff that, if they pull the series, I think they have a lot of potential there. Now let's go to something that looks very different than what I was expecting, but in a very, very good way. And I don't know what Tim's thoughts are on this, and I hope that if his ghost or whatever is at his computer, he would actually weigh in on this, because even though the trailer's been out for a couple of weeks, I only saw it a few days ago, and that is the new Luke Cage trailer. The trailer came out on the 9th of this month. Now, you just saw it before the show, right, James?
Yeah.
Okay, and what did you think?
Well, I think it's interesting. When I first saw it, I got a couple of vibes from it. First was the Superman pose when he was stopping the car, and then the Wolverine coming out of the tank thing. I liked it. The one thing I really enjoy about most of what Marvel does is it doesn't feel like it was pandering. Right. It was so easy to see. I could see this being so easy to pander, to try to get that sympathy, whereas it looks like they're just making a really cool superhero.
You mean when you say pandering, I assume you mean like because of the fact that he's black?
Yeah, and he's in Harlem. It would be so easy just to do tropes and to make white people the bad guys, whereas it seemed like you had some interesting villains put in there. He seemed really fleshed out. It seemed like they were trying to make a real guy, for lack of a better word, someone who's relatable, that wasn't just African American. It was like Star Trek with Cisco. He's a captain that happens to be African American. That's a hell of a captain. And this is a superhero with superpowers who's African American, who embraces that, but is still very relatable, and they're not trying to get anyone's vote. They're just making a really good series. I laughed during a couple of times, too. I thought they had some awesome jokes in there, especially when people would come after him, or he'd get his clothes torn. He said he was tired of replacing clothes. I just thought that was really awesome in there.
Well, one thing that's interesting, and I'm sorry, I should have told you this before we started the show, but if you can, do a quick search and bring up an image of the cover of Luke Cage Hero for Hire #1. That's the first comic book he appeared in. I would run downstairs and grab my copy of it, but I don't want to, run downstairs right now. Because here's something very interesting about this trailer that I was not expecting, but boy, am I excited about. And Tim knows this is true, is that a lot, and I mean a lot, of what you see in that trailer is pulled right out of the early run of Hero for Hire. And one of the reasons I was hoping you could find the image, and have you found it yet?
I'm putting it up. Hopefully this isn't like a redrawing or anything like that. That's what you're looking for. It'll pull up
when the time delay comes up, I'll let you know. But one thing to note in his original getup here is that he's wearing a yellow shirt and dark and just regular pants. Yeah, that is the actual cover. But notice his wrists have bands of steel on them. That was actually from the equipment that created him. And if you look in the trailer, you see those bands on his hands when he's coming out of that tank that you were mentioning reminded you of Wolverine.
Right.
Another thing is that tank is in the comic book, and by the way, Luke Cage Hero for Hire #1 came out in 1972. Wolverine's first appearance in comics was in 1974. So yeah, if anything, Wolverine stole the tank giving you powers thing from Luke Cage. Although, you could argue that it goes back further than that, because other superheroes have done that long before Luke Cage did, even Captain America with the super soldier serum. In the comic books, Luke Cage was in prison, was experimented on, and if you notice in the picture here, you see a lot of interesting different characters on here. one of which is a guard at the prison who is an all-out racist and was tormenting Luke Cage while he was in prison, and actually is the reason Luke Cage got his powers, because he tried to sabotage the experiment but accidentally basically changed it to where Luke Cage became completely indestructible. And I believe that he dies in the incident that gives him his powers, and Luke Cage is believed to have killed him even though he didn't. So Luke Cage is a fugitive on many fronts and becomes a superhero for hire in Harlem. Now, all of this, now some of the details, of course, but a lot of the imagery from this comic book and from subsequent issues of Luke Cage are in that trailer. Like you were saying, they could have been easily to pander. Well, this comic book was written about a black guy in Harlem who is a fugitive from justice, and in the 1970s, in the same era that Gene Wilder was making movies like Silver Streak and Blazing Saddles. And the fact that Marvel embraced that and put it into this show, because and I'll tell you, when I saw the trailer, I was like, wow, this is really and I'm not saying this in a derogatory way, but just in a kind of, I was surprised. This is a very black show. The entire cast of main characters that we've seen so far are African American, and now there's not a problem with that. I'm not complaining about it. I'm all for it, considering his character, where he's from, what his story is. But with the whitewashing that Hollywood tends to do, especially with stories like this, where you might have, if Luke Cage himself was black, well, still, at least all of the villains and background characters are going to be white. But no, it looks like almost everybody in this series is going to be black. And I think that's awesome that they are sticking to the source material. And it would make sense that if this is what we see as far as the tank and him getting the powers is probably flashbacks. And I know that they mentioned, they mentioned that he's in Harlem, which is a predominantly black area, at least at the time that Luke Cage was there. And so it all makes sense that you would have a predominantly black story. But I'm amazed that Marvel has the guts to do it, and impressed and excited about it.
Well, two things. First off, that was my main point to it, that it was an all black cast, but it felt natural and it felt a part of the story. It didn't feel like they were just shoving people in there to shove people in there. Right. I don't necessarily think it's brave to have an all black cast in and of itself, but I think it's very cool that they were able to do it, and do it in a way where it just seems relatable to everybody. It's not. It doesn't feel pandering.
Think about this. So we're talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe here, and what's interesting is that people are trying. These days, social justice warriors and those types are out there saying we need more diversity. The first movie that became a massive hit for Marvel was Blade, and Marvel has not been afraid of embracing their heroes for what they are. And even so, some people get pissed off about the fact that Iron Fist is a white guy, even though he's always been a white guy in the comic books. And they're pissed off because Iron Fist is a martial artist. Like, oh, martial artists have to be Asian or something. So they're basically mad because Marvel didn't follow a stereotype. But that being said, to have a cast that is almost entirely black is, generally speaking, not the best way to market a big budget production.
I don't think that's because of social justice warriors have an issue when you don't. Oh man, that's not for the show. But my thing is, generally, I see social justice warriors get upset when you have too many white people in it, is what I'll say. But I do. Again, I think that it's done very, very well. I agree that there is some risk to doing it to a complete black cast, because you'll have the anti-crowd of that saying, "Oh, this is pandering," when it's obviously not. It's just good writing.
Well, it's not even that it's pandering as much as it's, people tend to there are movies that have entirely black casts, and generally speaking, only black people go to see them, which is why these movies will make money, but they also have very small budgets. The Medea films, for example. And they have a very loyal following, but a very small following, because you know, if you're making a movie that only appeals to 10% of the population, then you are definitely limiting your ability to make money. Whereas if you have a cast that is primarily Caucasian, which is still the majority in this country, your odds of making money are much higher. Which is, you know, in all honesty, probably why, you know, one of the reasons they started with Daredevil and they didn't start with Luke Cage.
Sure.
But I love the Luke Cage that they've shown. I loved him in Jessica Jones, and I absolutely cannot wait to see him blossom in his own series. And I also like, and this is a minor little thing, but and I know Tim will get this. I love the fact that in that trailer they mentioned that the city has a new Defender. That term is a name drop and an Easter egg for us geeks who know about the superhero team, the Defenders, of which Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and Daredevil are going to be a part of in the next couple of years on Netflix.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll be the movie Flash and not the stupid Flash that we see that's on TV.
What? Flash?
Whatever his name is. Who was it? Who was one of the Defenders?
I said Luke Cage, Daredevil, and Jessica
Daredevil.
Jones.
That's what I meant. Daredevil. I'd rather see the Flash than Daredevil.
You're dead to me, James.
Nobody likes Daredevil.
First of all, you haven't even watched the Daredevil Netflix show, have you?
I haven't, but I have seen where the Flash is afraid to touch a woman's private parts to save her, even from first-degree burns.
What's that got to do with Daredevil?
I don't know. I don't like the Flash of the first season. I thought I had a way of taking down the Flash of the first, because I heard Flash when you obviously said Daredevil. Anytime I can make fun of the Flash of the series, I'm going to do it.
What, just because Tim loves the Flash?
No, it has nothing to do with Tim loving the Flash. It has everything to do with that he's a weenie and nobody likes him.
Yeah. Whatever. So, from awesome news like about Luke Cage to some we're gonna go segue onto some what in my opinion is very, very depressing news, and that is that James just decided to ruin my day by sending me an article that confirms the villain for the solo Batman film. Now, of course, I know that even people that hated Batman v Superman will and Suicide Squad agree that Ben Affleck is an awesome Batman. And many people who don't like these movies will go so far as to say Ben Affleck is the best Batman we've seen on screen. But basically now we know the villain for the Batman solo film is going to be Deathstroke, Will Smith's Deathstroke.
The problem is that it could have worked. They could have done a really good Batman versus Deathstroke movie, but the problem becomes is that now they're using Will Smith's Deathstroke, and what that is effectively an anti-hero versus an anti-hero. I identify with Deathstroke. I like Deathstroke. I don't want to see Deathstroke become Will Smith's Deathstroke. I don't want to see him become the villain, the type of villain required to make a good movie. I think this is going to just really bite them.
Yeah, well, and I think I understand that the Joker thing would be pushing it because we've already had Batman versus the Joker twice. But the thing is, Batman has such a huge rogues gallery and so much untapped potential, and this is what they come up with. And if they were going to do Batman v Deathstroke, then they should have done that before the Suicide Squad movie hit. This is another example of DC Comics or DC Productions proving that they don't know what the hell they're doing, especially when they compare to Marvel and what they've been doing. There's no plan here. They just said, oh, Deathstroke, yeah, he's cool. Let's throw him in with Batman. Well, wouldn't it have been nice, especially like for the few things about Suicide Squad that were good? What if we had Batman taking on Killer Croc or Deathstroke or even the Jared Leto Joker before Suicide Squad came out, so that we could actually get to know these characters a little bit before we throw them into a superhero team or a super villain team?
You're building up characters?
Oh yeah, thank you, Tim. I that is so funny. Because I knew that and I blew it.
Yeah, you can't get mad at me about the Flash now.
I can't. Well, no, DC is. Thank you, Tim. Deathstroke is not the same as Deadshot. Deadshot is Will Smith's character. Deathstroke is another character. They are very similar in appearance, but yes, they are not the same. Thank you, Tim. I feel like a Class A idiot right now because I knew that, but anyway,
he did it because
I still don't like it
because I said it. That's what it is. Just blame it on me.
I do blame it on you because you're the one that was telling me that it was Will Smith.
Yeah.
So what did the article say? Will Smith? Because if the article said Will Smith, then I'll give you a little bit of a pass. But
well, I will take a look on that and see.
That was loud.
I will take a look. I bet it did say Will Smith though. That's where we got confused. It's the Rap.com's fault.
The Rap.com is the name of the website where you found this?
Yeah, it's their fault.
See, I'm going to look it up now. This is what I get, folks, for trusting James.
Dude, I would not do that. Deathstroke will, in fact, be the main antagonist of the Batman standalone movie he's directing. The one thing I wonder, though, that you brought up in this interesting conversation is why didn't they go with the Joker? And I wonder if a lot of that wasn't because of the how crazy Jared Leto was going, how he was acting and everything.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Batman has a lot of interesting villains. Ra's al Ghul, Hugo Strange, the Joker, the Penguin, Riddler, Catwoman. There's so many to choose from. And, I think some of them would be more interesting than others in film versus TV. Like Hugo Strange worked really well in the Gotham TV series. The only problem with it was the fact that there was no Batman in that series. But their Hugo Strange was perfect. Would Hugo Strange work in a film? I don't know, because he's not really, he's not a fighter. He's definitely not going to be a big action-y kind of villain. He's the more criminal mastermind type. I think that's why they're going for Deathstroke, to be honest with you. Because Deathstroke is a person that fights.
Right.
I would like to see the KG Beast, to be honest with you. Which I don't know if it's what Tim would think of the KG Beast being in the film, but I actually really like the 10 Nights of the Beast storyline, and I think that would make a cool film. Yeah,
I'm with you too. Because I knew that too. I knew I'm not as bad on this as I appear to be. I did know there was a difference between Deathstroke. But they're so similar too. That's another thing. I think this is going to be confusing because it confused us. You're a buff on this, and it confused
I'm a Marvel
you.
Buff, though. That's my thing. I have very little DC in comparison.
But still, even then, that seems like, I don't know. It still seems like a negative.
Black Mask would be a good one. That would be a good one. That's Tim was saying. Deathstroke was actually the inspiration for Deadpool, if I remember correctly. And now if that was Deadshot, I'm going to feel like a complete idiot. But let me let's see. Deathstroke the Terminator or simply Slade. Maybe not. No. I guess it was. Dang it! I am just not with it on my DC. We need Tim here. It's too bad he's dead.
It is. That's what I was gonna say. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. Court of Owls would be a good story to do. I think there are a lot. I mean, Death in the Family. Even the Killing Joke, if they did it right, and not like they did it in the animated film.
I'd like to see the death. What they should do, I think, would be interesting. They need Jared Leto, and I wonder if this was change because of what's going on with Jared Leto. But the death of Robin, I think
that's the death in the family. That's what I was talking about. Is
but I mean,
Robin basically? Well, Joker beats him to death with a crowbar.
in Batman v Superman, that was one of the things people liked and worked. So I think they'd want to see that storyline.
Right, but the problem is, and this is the other thing about DC Universe versus MC Universe. There's no plan at the. I mean, because here's the thing: how awesome would it be if you were going to launch the MC or the DCU? Now, the most popular character that Warner Brothers has put out related to DC has been Batman. Clayface is another good one. Yeah, that's a good one, Tim. In DC, Batman has been very, very successful. So you do a Batman film, and you could even do it as a sequel to the Dark Knight trilogy if you wanted to. Even though you're recasting Batman, but you're saying, oh, it's like 10 years later or whatever. And you have Batman and Robin running around, and you end up with Robin getting killed. And then you move on to Man of Steel or something like it. Then you move on, and Batman v Superman starts taking on a little bit more depth, a little bit more meaning. When he's looking at that Robin costume, it actually has some depth to it besides just, ooh, look, there's a Robin costume. And for the fanboys, they get the reference with the spray-painted message on it. But for, most people, they're like, why the heck what's the deal with the Robin suit? Yeah, Calendar Man and Crazy Quilt, that would be awesome, right, Tim? Yeah.
So
those are actual villains, by the way. Look them up, Calendar Man and Crazy Quilt.
I know. I mean, I'm not Tim level, but I do like Batman, so I do know of many of them.
But if you set this up in advance, and that's the other thing. Okay, so you have in the first Batman film, you do the story that they implied at the beginning of Suicide Squad, with Joker and Harley Quinn becoming the king and queen of Gotham, and Batman trying to throw him down, and Joker ends up killing Robin. You can then do a second Batman film or something where he takes down a couple of villains and maybe throw in their Killer Croc and Deadshot or something like that. Then you move on to Man of Steel. You create this whole thing with Batman v Superman, where Batman is thinking that, great, now we have these superpowered gods coming down and are a threat to us, where Batman v Superman would start to make more sense. Then you do like a Flash solo film, and you throw in idiots like Captain Boomerang and have Captain Boomerang arrested by Flash at some point in the first Flash film. Then you move on to Suicide Squad. And in Suicide Squad, you bring in all the villains from the prior films, and it makes sense now. And you build that up. Then you move on to Justice League, because now we know that Bruce Wayne knows about the Suicide Squad thing. He thinks it's dangerous and reckless to do this, and so he decides to get together all the metahumans that he knows to try and stop this government agency from, corrupting, the world and using metahumans to try and further political gain. Then you can throw in Darkseid and all that stuff. If and this is just off the top of my head, and I'm not a huge DC fan, and that would be a much more coherent universe than what they're doing right now, where they just seem to be throwing together what they think the kids are going to buy.
Well, I shared with you from another reviewer called SF Debris, and I don't know if you watched it or not, but he's been going through the fall of the comic book universe and the birth of the MCU, and DC is not willing to do what Marvel did, because when Marvel first started, they took a huge loan and to get the ability to make any kind of movie they wanted in any way they wanted. But they had to almost hit every movie that they made. But they had complete control of everything, and they could make the movies the way they wanted, and they took a risk. They didn't instantly jump to the Avengers. They built it out. So they started with the Hulk. They started with Iron Man, and they started building it up. Another interesting point I think would be fun, if we're just talking in the world of fantasy, is that Batman movie where they kill Robin. You don't show... You can either do it where you see, like through a window where you can't make out what's going on, or through maybe shadows or something, but you don't show Robin getting the hell beat out of him and being killed. But then in Suicide Squad, since they're going to have to do this, this is where they come from, that's her backstory. That's where you see. Maybe after Robin is killed, Batman captures Harley Quinn, and then that's where Suicide starts with her. It goes back to that scene, and that's one of the things you see. How did he actually die? And that keeps people going through the movies wondering when they're going to see it or how they're going to see it. I don't know. There's just a lot of ways you can do it. I did not know that there was a villain called Zebra Man, though. And,
yes, there is an actual Batman villain named Zebra Man.
Were they high when they made some of these villains? Or?
Some of these, yes. I was actually just looking up some of the worst Batman villains, and Dr. Double X came up.
Yeah, I'm now looking. I'm looking Zebra Man up, and that's scary as hell. There's a Zebra Man. Did they make a movie? No, that can't be Batman. That would be ridiculous.
None of these characters were in the movies, but
no, because there's a Zebra Man movie, but that's not based on the Batman villain. That would be stupid.
Dr. Double X is Dr. Simon X, ECKS, who is a scientist who discovered that human auras can be separated from their physical form to act on their own. After undergoing the process himself, Dr. X own energy doppelganger, who he named Dr. Double X, get it, embarked on a life of crime, clashing with Batman. Oddly, the energy duplicate was so powerful that Batman often had to call in superpowered help to defeat it. Despite its considerable powers, Dr. Double X is still in the ghost of an overweight weirdo with a fin on his head and a pun for a name. So there's still justice in the world. Yes, Dr. Double X is a real character.
Who's overweight is what I'm...
Yeah. Isn't that great? So
yeah. He has a psychotic clown that is his arch nemesis, but an overweight guy he's got to call in like super...
Oh, here's a good one. Ten-Eyed Man. This is another actual villain. Ten-Eyed Man is possibly the only supervillain in history who ever could have been defeated by a high five. After losing his sight in an accident, Vietnam veteran and warehouse security guard Philip Reardon underwent an experimental procedure that grafted his optic nerves to his fingertips. This, of course, qualifies him to fight Batman, at least according to the mobster who convinced him that Batman was to blame for his accident. After several defeats at Batman's hands, Ten-Eyed Man decided to lure Batman to Vietnam, where Batman guaranteed that any part of him that didn't already have post-traumatic stress disorder before the encounter certainly did after. The Ten-Eyed Man was killed in his final battle, the Ten-Eyed Man versus the Falling Building in Crisis on Infinite Earths.
That's silly.
So Ten-Eyed Man, that would be a great one. How about Kite Man?
Kite Man?
Yeah, Kite. You know, like go fly a kite?
Yeah, I know. I'm looking him up right now. Kite Man.
Yeah, he's a real guy.
He looks like he sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this must have been during the Golden Era or Golden Age.
By the way, Kite Man's real name is Charles Brown. It's actually so Charlie Brown is Kite Man. I guess that's the first enemy with a kite-eating tree, right?
As soon as I heard that, I got the joke. They weren't even trying at that point.
Where did they come up with that?
That had to be while they were losing money and didn't have any funds to.
I want to get it. I wonder if Tim has a comic book with an appearance by Kite Man. That would be.
He probably. I mean, he's dead now, so we could go and get it. We could find it.
I'm going to go to his house tomorrow and see. What he doesn't realize is that as soon as I found out he was flying to Utah, I had booked a flight to California.
It's actually where we are now. In fact, we just have fancy screens behind us that make it look like where we're at. But yeah, so that's crazy.
Man, we really. I think that would definitely make for some great films. By the way, he first appeared in Batman Volume 1, number 133, which is from August of 1960. So His superpowers are excellent hang glider pilot.
Wow. Batman got defeated by a guy who was good at flying a kite.
Yeah.
That's
So yes, Batman versus Kite Man. We need to see that on the big screen. Yeah. So you can tell it's been a slow news week. Plus, Tim's been dead, so we've been talking about stupid supervillains that Tim actually liked.
had it coming.
Yeah, Tim, why? Why do you like Batman so much? Why do you worship the altar of Kite Man
Yeah, there's nothing there.
and Zebra Man
There's nothing there in the slightest.
and Killer Moth and Clue Master?
So do you have a video pick of the week though, so that we can restore this? Because I sure as hell don't.
No, I figured you would. So I didn't either. Instead, we're just gonna say, you know what, Tim? If we'll miss you, buddy. It's too bad you're dead. But fortunately, I think that. Oh wow, Tim actually does have a comic book with Kite Man in it. All right, Tim, when you come back next week, I want to see that on the air. I want to see some of your horrible appearances of villains from Batman history. But anyway, we're gonna wrap it up. Assuming that Tim actually is alive, we'll be back. If not, then next week I'll just be doing a show talking about all my cool new comic books that I just got. My flight lands in California in the morning.
Yeah.
And
he died like he lived though, in abject fear. So I think it was fitting.
Yeah, and sweaty and kind of nervous.
Yeah.
You know,
not understanding the world around him. So.
Yeah. So, Condiment King, that would be great. Condiment King.
That's not an actual. Hold on. Before you end it, that's not.
And you're going to look up and see if Condiment King is real.
That cannot be. Hold on.
With Tim, he might know.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That's an actual.
Is Condiment King real?
It is. He is
Oh,
real.
yeah, I see that. But
he has his own Lego character.
That's incredible. So Condiment King should be basically in the next Batman movie. Oh yeah, it looks like he appeared in Batgirl Year 1. So Condiment King, an arch enemy of Batgirl. Wow. And Tim knows this.
Hard to see how he's not married right now.
I know, it's really amazing. Just why aren't the women flocking to him?
All right, I guess we'll end this.
Yeah. So this has been the Untitled Show about nerdy stuff. I know this was not our best show. It's probably our worst because awesome Tim, show. Really, we do miss you, buddy, and I hope that after you're, and to let people know what Tim is doing right now is he is in Utah for Comic-Con because, every now and then. So if you get an opportunity to meet your idol, to meet your true hero, you need to take advantage of that. And at this Utah Comic-Con, and you can look it up. I'm not making this up, and you can understand why Tim is so excited. You can go to their website, just do a search for Utah Comic-Con. But it is absolutely true that the three main characters from Dukes of Hazzard are going to be there. And so Tim is going to be able to get an autographed picture of himself with Barbara Bach, John Schneider, and Tom Wopat. And I know how incredibly excited he is for that because, it's Tim. And absolutely nothing in the world gets Tim more excited than a good marathon of Dukes of Hazzard. Although I'm still not sure why.
Plus, he'll be having some good content coming back here. He should be bringing some content back here, as well as on the Bitter Bastard podcast, which y'all should go check out.
And so next week, Tim and I will be talking about Don't Breathe, the new movie. We will also be getting a nice little report from Tim about his adventures in Utah, assuming he's alive. And he'll probably be saying, what the heck happened to my comic book collection while I was gone? Hint, hint, it's not in California anymore. And, more action-packed nerd stuff.
Yeah, not this. Because apparently Tim is what makes it work. I can't replace Tim. We figured that out tonight.
So we have definitely worked that one out.
Goodbye, people.